Okay, this is a quickie review of Very Short Treks, number 3, Worst Contact, set in the Next Generation period with with Will Riker and Gates. The star date's completely silly. They go down to the planet of Cillian things that pick their nose and leave raw fish everywhere. That's basically it. Gross. They've developed warp drive, and they look like kind of like the Golden Girls crossed with like those Telosian head things from. And it's probably the funniest of the first three. The other two, the first one was just no. They did that wrong. The first one was the misunderstanding of names and things like that. The second one was making Spock look like he was really, really stupid, which he isn't. And this one was the juxtaposition. They were trying for humor. They were trying for a sort of gallows humor, silly track idea. It's probably the more silly track of the three. Idea being that these aliens are somehow gross and pick their noses like Beavis and Butthead and want to go to the that's the joke, and they have spoiled fish and which they would know from scans. It's still ludicrous and still misses the point of humor. However, appears to be like it was written by children, or at least man children, that don't understand humor, that were from back earlier. I guess how would you kind of improve that episode? Well, I kind of like the idea that you have an episode where the first contact is so gross and slimy that they don't want to have anything to do with it, but they kind of did that in Next Generation with the aliens in the slime pit and the Sarek ones and the gross out aliens from Conspiracy. And so I don't know if I would change much of it just because it was already kind of silly, and I'm not sure who the third person was in Beam Down thing. Was it supposed to be Wesley? I don't know, but the I don't know. The context is weird. I mean, are they trying to be just silly track? Because it's trying to be like old school silly track. Wouldn't it be funny if it would be kind of some of the stuff we did back in the day was just weird. At one point, there was a classic track episode where we played on the playground, high school role playing game, where the classic Trek crew beams down and has to find Ronald Reagan, who was retired from being president. He was just barely retired from being president at that point, but they go down to the planet and they have to get his brain cells from him to repair Scotty, who has become froofy because it was the 80s. And so that was good. Also, there was an episode where Lieutenant Yar, because it was season 1, that was the earlier one, fell in love with a lizard man, and there was a parody of Little Shop of Horrors, because I was in the school play version of it as the dentist, the evil dentist. So I had to do that. I had to do a spoof of that. But yes. So I did one where they beamed Spuds McKenzie up to the Enterprise D, and LaForge is apparently accosting him for some reason. Spuds McKenzie, the little Spud dog thing. The crew was all like, "Oh God, oh, don't do that, oh," because when we were kids, suggesting bestiality was hilarious, and even though nothing happens, the Budweiser dog, he's just a joke. It's the kind of stuff they were doing with this one, so. Being gross. I could see one or two of the cast members from that classic crew of Silly Track, which became Starship Locations eventually, doing a booger gag just to be gross. And it would be an episode. But yeah, so that's closest to silly track. A booger episode. It would have been very gross and unsanitary. And Mark's cards would have been like, oh, snot everywhere. But yes, there was even an episode of Enterprise that was about a snot creature that was taking over a deck with snot plant things. So they've done that before. I think there was one where Riker got slimed as well, because of Ghostbusters was the inspiration for that, and among other things. So he slimed me. Ghostbusters was essentially a National Lampoon type thing. Yeah, so there you go. They would have done that joke. Absolutely. They slimed me. Anyway, so yeah, it was dumb, but it was silly track. I can't really knock it for being a silly track because we did worse in our role-playing game. We actually combined a guy with an Andorian with a Tribble, did the Tuvix thing. Before the Tuvix thing. We had it, that Tuvix episode. We did that before, because, in 1988. It was before Voyager even existed. Before Deep Space Nine even existed. We have another story that they copied later on. Ooh, because making a mutant. Of course, we were kind of ripping off The Fly, and I think they were too. So remember the movie The Fly with Jeff Goldblum? So yeah, you could say like, okay, they were just ripping off The Fly. But Mike Van Dam, one of the characters on the final season of Silly Track at Pine Hill, he was an Andorian. He was supposed to be an Andorian in it, but there were tribbles on the transporter pad, and somehow they grafted into him and made him pansexual and made him the ability to reproduce tribbles, which is strange, very progressive for 1988, but I don't think we were thinking progressively. I think we just want to be gross. So Tribble Boy was walking around, fuzzy hair, because his hair looked kind of like a Tribble's, poofy hair, and the joke was that evil Worf showed up and he was like, I will take care of those excess tribbles on the ship by eating them. And then they might say, no, wait a minute, isn't that what happened in that Strange New Worlds episode with the trouble with Edward? And that joke with eating the tribbles, the cereal and all that. Yes, they did, because the guy that wrote The Trouble with Edward was a Pine Hill person. So blame it on the story there. It wasn't me, but somebody real close. But yeah, they were on the same wavelength, definitely. Many years later, so that's awesome. That did a short trek. It was called The Trouble with Edward. It was panned by the fans. It wasn't us. It was somebody that went on the same wavelength. The Trouble with Edward. But yeah, he was definitely. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Van Dam wrote that episode under a pseudonym. He probably did. But yes, I want to put myself in there as a Trouble with Edward. So naturally, he was in Starship Locations Season 1. It's the Tribble Andorian, but he was actually the Barzan was playing him. But yeah, the idea that Worf would eat his children is gross, and he was apparently a she at that point, somehow. Which is very progressive for the 80s, but we were just being gross. But yes, also Season 1 LaForge from The Next Generation was very obviously gay. Not later on, but just in the first season. Just by. You figure like in the future they're probably Metro, they probably just figure whatever, I can date anybody I want, even species I want. Yes, so if like so if you want to date a lizard, a little disturbing, but okay. How's that work in space? Captain Kirk in an episode, he does it with a pterodactyl, a pteramorph, in one of the silly Mark Scars episodes. And he gets a horrible venereal disease that somehow he catches. He gets herpes. He gets herpes simplex 43, and they've got to cure it. Now, if they do that as a very short track, we'll know that they definitely have some silly. And they could. That role-playing game was kind of known over there. Well, they could totally do that. The snot episode is clearly one of those. Let's see which Cillian would have written a snot episode. Just to be really, really gross. Probably somebody that's gross in the cast. That should be gross. I'm trying to think of which character would have done that. Maybe, yeah. Who was really gross? I guess Messi, the Nomez. He probably would have done that if you thought it would be funny. Yeah, maybe him. Yeah, because he did the. Yeah, it would have been him. Maybe. So yeah, better episode. So. And all the Cillian stories. If some of those Cillian stories end up very short treks, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So the first two were really bad. This one was at least trying to be clever. Although you figured that Riker and the Doctor, and it was an animated like Beavis and Butthead. I hope it was Mike Judge doing it. That would be fun. He's on the same wavelength as us. Beavis and Butthead was clearly like. We were actually Beavis and Butthead before Mike Judge thought of it. Yeah, my friend Jim Buffkin, and I were Beavis and Butthead. Damn it, Beavis! Before Mike Judge did. And of course he was Beavis. Yeah, so I am Cornelio. You have offended my bunhole. Yeah, so they did it. They did the Beavis and Butthead reference. That's probably what it was. It was a Beavis and Butthead reference. Mike Judge. That's what they were doing. Mike Judge. All right.